Welcome to Professors Unframed. My name is Rebekah Cochell from the Studio and Digital Arts Department at Liberty University. Professors Unframed is where I will interview your favorite professors so you can learn more about their creative work and how their faith influences it.
I'm happy to have you today to join me while I interview Professor Joel Cockrell. He's an illustrator, graphic designer, jack of all trades in the art industry, and he teaches here at Liberty University both at the graduate and the undergraduate level.
I invited you here today to talk about your creative work and your faith and how your faith impacts your creative work, and learn a little bit about yourself so that we can share this with students and they can be inspired by you. So
Of
can you
course.
tell us about your job as an illustrator?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been illustrating for quite some time. I've been drawing seriously ever since I was about 13, so about 20 years now. I've been drawing. I got into illustration full time, I'd say more seriously in about the last like 5 to 6 years. I'm currently just full time freelancing, accepting book jobs, book covers, interiors, a lot of curriculum and education content. I've found a bit of a niche within illustration. It's a broad term to say like you're an illustrator. That could be game art, concept art, any realm of entertainment, movies, all sorts of stuff. I'm specifically within kids media because I love illustrating for kids. I love illustrating book covers and picture books and educational content. I just think illustrating for kids is a ton of fun. So specifically, I'm a kids media illustrator, but I found this niche within like educational curriculum for kids. So I worked for a little over 3 years for Awana Bible curriculum. If you're familiar with them, did a lot of fun kids illustrations for them, which has been great to see all around the country, and they're doing a lot of really cool stuff internationally. As well. And then for about the last almost year, I've been working for a curriculum company called Imagine Learning. They're just a for-profit, like education company, creates curriculum for public schools all across the nation. So that's been really fun. Doing curriculum illustration's been great because I do have a background in graphic design as well. So I get to mix in a little bit of that, a little bit of graphic design with a little bit of illustration work. It's a ton of fun. It's often intimidating to be a freelancer and to know that my jobs have an end to them, and then I have to find new jobs. But it's also exciting and definitely keeps each day different. But I love it. It's fun to sit down and, for the most part, draw every day. Not every day, but pretty close to it. And I love that about it.
What has been one of your most memorable or meaningful projects and why?
I would say at Awana, actually, there was this specific curriculum avenue that they were working on. They had technically started it before I got there, but it wasn't fully developed. It was just a curriculum for weekends for mostly churches and large and small churches, and they wanted to do a lot of illustration for some of their animated Bible explainer videos. So they wanted to take some difficult lessons that they had, like PowerPoints, and they had tons of stuff for teachers, but they wanted to do these kind of short overview videos for each lesson to put it on the screen, show the kid, give them kind of like an introduction to that Bible story, but it demanded a lot from someone. And when they hired me, I think they definitely saw me as a jack of all trades, which I'm thankful for because it got me the job and it was a ton of fun. It was also one of the most challenging things I've ever done. But because of that, also one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. I think I saw myself grow more working on that project than I ever have before because I had to step into a lot of extra roles. It wasn't just Joel the illustrator, it was also Joel the art director and Joel the manager and Joel the guy who is gonna like meet with a lot of the executive team and figure out like the strategy behind this and what kind of style do we want and what are our competitors doing and how can we like rise up to their level and maybe even challenge them as well. So it was creating these Bible explainer videos and it just required a lot of drawing. I mean, just constant creation and balancing this world where, yes, I wanted to make the best art possible, but also balancing that with deadlines and how do I make something that's sustainable. And that was a really fulfilling project because of that. They still are doing that project now, and they were able to keep like the style that I set for them. So that's been cool to look back and see and how they've even taken what I've done and they've improved upon it, and it's only gotten better. So that was a super fulfilling and meaningful project because I got to work with so many people. I got to challenge myself, and I truly believe I was able to help them make a really great product that at the end of the day was sharing scripture and sharing stories of faith and hope with a bunch of kids all across the nation. So I'd say that project. There's been a bunch, but that's probably the standout.
That sounds like an amazing experience. And that leads me into my next question. You create work for both secular and Christian organizations, but how would you say that your faith influences your work as an illustrator overall?
I think it was a really practical answer when I was at Awana because it was truly, hey, you are making art probably related to the Bible or strictly from the Bible, and that's being sent out. It was a really practical answer when I was at Awana because of that. I do think that's where students and professionals tend to go when they think of like, how can I impact the world with my faith, but let's say as an illustrator or as a graphic designer. And I think those roles, like my role at Awana, do exist, where it's kind of just this very straightforward, practical application. I'm a believer, I'm making maybe Bible related art, and that's going out to serve the Lord in that way. I think working with a lot of more secular clients, it hasn't been so much necessarily the work I create because the work tends to, be about whatever science education project we're discussing or something like that, like working for Imagine Learning. We're just making these really fun books about like kids learning lessons and learning how to read, and it's literally just reading comprehension. But what I have noticed is it's mostly been my professionalism and my workplace attitude that has made, I think, the most difference. Even if that's over Zoom, most of the company is like fully remote, and we've met sometimes in person as well. I would say it's been how I treat others, even just messaging over Slack or email, or how I present myself in a meeting, how I interact with them in person. What happens when things get really tense and difficult? What happens when we have to sit down with someone and talk about their performance or whatever it might be? It's been those situations that I think I've been able to take what I believe and try to shine some truth into the world a little bit. I think it's great to say, well, I'm going to do this piece of art and it's maybe about the Bible and it's this great, straightforward application. I think I tend to think of my career, though, more as a skill-based career, much like you would say, well, I'm a plumber. And I don't think many plumbers who are believers go out saying, well, I'm going to do Christian plumbing today necessarily. I think they go out saying, I'm going to do the best quality plumbing work I can to honor the Lord and to honor my customers and the family I'm providing for. I'm just going to go do the best work as a plumber that I can today. But in my attitude and in the way I interact with my customers and my clients, and when things go wrong or right, how do I respond to those things? And what does it say about my heart and what I believe? That's more so how I see my career now. I'm just trying to go out and make the best art I possibly can make, even if it's maybe not an image that's, so to speak, Christian themed, but behind it is a Christian artist who is putting his soul into it and trying to respond to his coworkers and his clients in a way that hopefully does honor the Lord.
I just love everything you said about your attitude and your mindset and the work ethics. So are there any specific scriptures that inspire you or spiritual practices?
I would say for spiritual practices, there's this book series. I mean, series is kind of a light term. I think there's two to three of them, maybe a fourth one now. Um, Called Every Moment Holy. And it's a lot of liturgical things, which I don't do a lot of liturgical things necessarily, but when I was at Awana, they gave us these books for free. And there was this one book in there that really impacted me because it had all these different, it might be prayers or it might be creeds or even just short devotions on different topics as it related to a lot of, to be honest, mundane things like throughout throughout your life. So you could literally go through the beginning of the book through all these categories, and it would say like when beginning a new project, or when ending a project, or when starting a new journey. It would be these kind of categories, and then within those categories were these different sayings or liturgies or creeds. And there was a whole section on like four artists. And that
Wow.
intrigued me when I got the book. And so it's called Every Moment Holy. And within this one section of book two, it had all these different things for like beginning an artistic work or in the middle of a difficult artistic work. And I started to read those um, originally when I was at Awana, but I still do now. Whenever maybe I was having like a week where I didn't feel, so to speak, inspired, or I felt maybe a little bit lost in like what I was doing. And there's this one where it's basically a prayer from an artist to the Lord, and a pledge to the Lord of what you're going to do that day. And it's not really about the creation of what you're making, but it's purely about your attitude and coming to that day thankful that the Lord has given you this window into his soul as the my first creator, and how he has given you an opportunity today to make something. And just by making something, whether it's good or bad or difficult or easy, you are getting to experience part of the Lord's nature that we don't always connect with, and that's him as a creator. That's been really impactful, I think, as my spiritual journey, to connect the artistic things I do in almost like a devotional kind of way. I know some illustrators that use their sketchbook like a biblical journal. Instead of taking notes on maybe a sermon that they listen to, they'll actually sketch out the sermon. So instead of writing down maybe some interesting things that like the speaker is saying about a certain passage, instead they'll start to illustrate what the Lord is showing them. And it still serves as a reminder for them when they go back and read through it of what that passage,
Mhm.
or maybe that sermon was talking about. So I'm trying to learn how to use just my daily practice of sketching as part of my spiritual practice.
Thank you. That sounds like an incredible resource. One last question. What advice would you give to students who are beginning their journey in the world of art or design?
There's so many things. It's tough to just pick one thing. I feel like you could ask me that question every day for the rest of this year, and I'd give you a different answer every single day because there's so many things I want to share. I'll share one thing that I shared with a student maybe about a month ago in one of my courses. She wanted to meet with me over Teams and just have a Zoom call and talk about what it's like to be a graphic designer, but also she was really interested in being an illustrator. And well, I asked her, I said, well, what do you want to do? That's my first question I always ask when they say, well, I want to be a designer or I want to be an illustrator. And I say, great, but what do you want to do? And students will typically throw out about 20 different career paths, and
Mhm.
they'll tell me everything that they're interested in. And my advice to her, which seemed to shock her at the time, was think about everything that you could live without ever doing, but can at least appreciate. And what are the things that you not only appreciate, but could never live without doing? Because that was a really pivotal point for me. It was when I can kind of even remember, like I remember where I was when I had this thought because someone had shared it with me. And I remember thinking, what are the things that I enjoy artistically, but if I lived my whole life and never actually got to practice them, I would be okay with? And I realized animation, for example, everyone loves to say that they want to do animation because it's a really fun, exciting environment. And I was interested in animation. I loved 2D art. I loved all the background paintings. I loved all these animated movies. But I remember that day thinking, if I went the rest of my life and I never animated, I think I'd be okay with that. I think I can just appreciate it from afar, and I can be a consumer and an admirer of those that do it, but I think I'd be okay if I never did it. But then I remember thinking, if I never got to do book illustration, if I lived my whole life and I never got to illustrate books, I think I would be really sad about world of illustration. I want to participate in it. And so that was my question to her, and that would be my advice for other students. It's okay to have lots of artistic interests. That's a beautiful thing. But you need to really niche down. And what is the one or maybe couple of things that you couldn't live without? Because typically students are too broad in their understanding of illustration. I said it at the very beginning, illustration is this big term, just like graphic design. You can say, well, I want to be a designer. Great. But what kind of designer? Do you want to do branding? Do you want to do more digital web development? And even within that are all these subcategories. And it's okay to somewhat be a jack of all trades. I would say pick one main thing, and then you can have some subtle offshoots of that. So my advice would be sit down and say, well, do I really want to do concept art? Or do I just really enjoy looking at it? But I don't think I actually enjoy making concept art, and I'll be fine if I never do it again. And do I really want to work in animation, or do I just really appreciate it? Do I really want to do comic book art, or do I just like reading comic books? And that's okay. Find the one thing that you don't think you could live without doing. And I would say that would be, at least as of today, my number one piece of advice.
Wow, that is that's almost thinking that way is almost like a paradigm shift. I think that a lot of students will benefit from that advice, especially as they narrow down their niche and start their careers. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today about your amazing illustrative work and your faith as well.
Thank you for joining me today as I chatted with Professor Joel Cockrell and learn more about his work and illustrations. If you would like to see more, you can check out his website at joellaneart.com. And if you have any suggestions for other professors you would like to see interviewed, please send me their name. Thank you very much.